GoDaddy did great at marketing, but we never really respected their products. They've changed that a lot. Their products are quite sophisticated and good now, but they were the ones that demonstrated to me that it's good enough product and interesting marketing tends to win. We're building free websites for everyone. So down the angle of people don't want to make their website, we're saying, we'll make it for you. I mean, we're not spending a lot of time on these sites. So a lot of it's about how do we, through AI, through automation, through just like general efficiency and increasing the tools. The reality is you can offer free websites to everyone and they don't all take it. In fact, most of them don't take it. That's a hint for our competitors, maybe.
What do you think was the leading force that got you to where you are right now?
Timing was ultimately really helpful. Like we were very early. We didn't need to rely on the existence of an ecosystem of software or tools. We could build everything ourselves. And then GoDaddy, actually, when they started doing advertising, they actually raised the whole ocean. It actually was beneficial to us early on because they were actually teaching the world you could get your own website. And of course, they kept a lot of the customers from that, but we were often the second host they had after somebody like GoDaddy when they realized it could be better.
My guest is Dallas Kashuba, co-founder of DreamHost, one of the last big independent hosting companies in the US, known for its deep technical roots, being involved in open source projects such as Ceph, and for standing up for user privacy in a famous case against the US government. Dallas started DreamHost with his college friends and later became a public voice for the hosting industry, appearing on national TV to talk about data privacy and the role of hosting companies. We talk about the early internet days, open source, staying independent, the impact of AI, and why following the fun still works. By the way, Dallas is also a longtime music producer and DJ, and some of his original music was used in this episode, including this intro. Before we move on, a huge thank you to our diamond sponsor Blackwall, infrastructure security built for web hosters, engineered for engineers. We're also proud to be backed by our gold sponsors, Extendify, NameHero, and Panlava. Thanks to their support, we can keep pushing web hosting today forward. If you'd like to join our supporters and help us grow even more, just reach out. Dallas, thank you for joining, and
Thank you.
Let's go straight to your history. I think it's pretty interesting. I know that you founded DreamHost back in your college. So yeah, tell me about how did it happen that you've decided to create a hosting company, and yeah, what was your start?
Yeah, so we it didn't start out just hosting in the early days. It was so yeah, we started in 1997 officially, but we were kind of doing projects for a bit before that. And the web was very early then. This was before
Oh
Google
yeah.
started. And the first browser I used was Mosaic, it was before Netscape even.
Okay.
And things are simpler, but all the founders, we were all computer science, we were all programmers. And so the web was like a very exciting new thing. And so we decided we wanted to make things on it. And that sounded more fun than getting jobs, basically. So we started out making web apps, like very early, what you would call web apps now, because most websites were completely static. So we started doing some simple interactive kind of things using Perl and all this. And so as part of that, we ended up setting up our own server to host our own things. And then it's actually slightly murky how it became hosting, but eventually people started asking us if we could host their things, put it there.
Yeah.
And we started automating the server management and all that. And then ultimately built what was sort of the simple, very early version of what's our system now. The initial system, there was one server and it was a series of CGI scripts that would just do something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so hosting websites was next, I guess, and it's not unique, right? That the early adopters, the first who figured out how to host things on the server, started their hosting company, right?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the hosting as one product among a whole umbrella of products. It's just the
Yeah.
one that sort of took off, and eventually we realized had to take all of our time. But yeah, in the early days, we were very captivated by what the web could do, what was the potential. But obviously, the it's sort of like the picks and shovels is the term, like the
Yeah.
providing the tools for other people to do it. But because we were starting from the beginning as coders and making web apps, then we were building for ourselves, and I think that's kind of what led to it being we made tools that were more interesting for people like us than the
Yeah.
competitors that were out there.
All right. So you didn't really think about it like okay, let's make a big business, right? It was more about just providing things for the customers and not really like how to scale it, how to make it big, how to dominate the market, right?
Yeah, we were very naive in a lot of ways, but it was also we just wanted to kind of keep making things for ourselves, see who could use them, kind of go that way. I
Yeah.
mean, in retrospect, we could have done things to be bigger, but we also, I'd say, there's a good chance we would have just failed. It's like
Yeah.
you don't know what would have happened. But yeah, I mean, we made a lot of choices. We wrote a bug tracker early on, and we wrote our own internal software to manage time tracking and things like that. Just ridiculous things that there's tools. But it was
Yeah.
just because we didn't want to buy anything. So that was because we didn't know about the long-term cost of managing software. I mean, we were all early 20s. We were very young.
Early 20s, but we are talking about early 2000s, right? So it was still the
Yeah.
market that was very virgin, and now you have every single tool for every single need that you may have. But back in the days, there were not so many options, right?
Yeah, and I mean, even things like, say, obviously things like billing systems existed, but they didn't quite target like online businesses, subscription services, all that weren't really the thing. The competitors that really were doing what we were doing for sort of individuals and small businesses was like Earthlink and AT&T. It was the ISPs. It was an
Yeah.
extension of their business, and they did a relatively terrible job at it. First, it cost too much, but then it was always like members.earthlink.net slash users or tilde whatever username. Like they weren't
Yeah.
they weren't targeting doing a domain name, and to actually get domains online, often it was through more complex services or whatever. It was just aimed at a different market. So that was unintentional, kind of the vision for where it's like, well, everyone should be able to do this. And at the time, that was relatively interesting. We didn't quite know, I think, at the time. It was just like, this should be like this.
So what happened then? Things like GoDaddy, Web.com happened, and they were getting bigger and bigger. The market was changing. How were you adapting then?
So yeah, so GoDaddy they started at the same year, but they started as a registrar, and so at the time, domain registrars and hosts didn't tend to both do the same services. So that was one of my biggest mistakes, actually, not realizing that they would come into our market eventually. But they didn't do their first Super Bowl ad for years until 2005. So they were doing their business little by little. I mean, Vario was a bigger one then. Like there were. Some other ones. I can't remember when all these things came along, but we paid a lot more attention to Pair.com at the time, which only
Hmm.
just sold recently. Later was HostGator and Bluehost and
Yeah,
these kind of names.
yeah,
GoDaddy did great at marketing, but we never really respected their products. They've changed that a lot. Their products are quite sophisticated and good now,
yeah.
but they were the ones that demonstrated to me that it's good enough product and great, or at least interesting marketing
I mean, come
tends
on,
to
yeah,
win. We've
yeah.
always been very product focused to a fault, I would say, um, and also technology focused even more than product. It's like putting these bits out and not necessarily having it be as easy to use as it could be. Necessarily that's shifted a lot over the last even 15 years. Like we're very
Yeah.
focused on usability and things now.
I
Yeah,
entered the market when I was 21. It was 2011, so I was already
yeah,
late. That's why I'm asking. Like, I don't exactly know what was happening back then. I just remember the ads for Jean-Claude Van Damme, the GoDaddy
yeah.
thing, and that was when I was entering the market. So what you're saying is like a Wild West a little. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, there were a lot of providers, and it was hard to find any one of them because it was only online marketing. It was really word of mouth, very
yeah.
heavily. So most of our early marketing that really pushed our growth was all about referrals and encouraging referrals. So we would offer credit for referrals, and so
Hmm.
and then also just like steep discounts we started doing at some point for the first year. So we were part of the wave of that, which I'm not sure that's been great for the industry, but it
Yeah.
certainly accelerated growth. But yeah, in terms of how customers found you, a lot of it was word of mouth early on.
But in the meantime, you were also involved with many projects, right? And I guess the biggest success, I like very subjectively, but I would say it was Ceph and in being involved with OpenStack. And can you tell a bit more about that?
Yeah. So Ceph was born directly out of Sage, one of the other co-founders actually created it. So it was inspired by the things we were trying to do. So our hosting system very early on was sort of cloud-like in the sense that we built a system where all of this the data was not stored locally on the servers. It was all stored on file servers. We were using NetApps, a network appliance, which are actually quite expensive, and it's all NFS. There's problems that come with that, latency problems and things like that. But the idea was if any server uh, died, you could basically move all that stuff. The data was safe still, so you could just move all the configurations to another server.
Hmm.
That's very common today using Kubernetes and things like that. But at the time, we built our whole system to do that. So the problem was with all these network appliances, they were quite expensive. We were, getting them secondhand. We were doing all kinds of things to get it cheaper and cheaper because we needed to keep up with the drive towards, bigger and bigger disk allotments for customers. We don't do things this way now. Now we have a separate backup system and all that stuff. So it's not
Yeah.
so real time. But so out of that, I think it's like we saw that need because there were other companies. There was something called Blue Arc, and there were some open sourcey ones that were running on sort of commodity hardware,
Hmm.
but none of them were very good. We tried buying these things; they just couldn't handle the load. So the basis for stuff, the algorithm was actually Sage's PhD grad school. It was actually his thesis. So and then after that, he came back. So he left for a bit to go do that. He's more of an academic type. He does not work on DreamHost today, but he's still one of my closest friends. But he had this idea how to do it. He came back. We created a team around it and just started funding it, and it kind of took on a life of its own. And eventually, that led to the selling, well, creating a company around that became a separate
Yeah.
company. I think that company probably got up to, I don't know, 30, 40 people or something. But we had some outside funding for that. Mark Shuttleworth invested into it actually. So that was a different experience for sure. We just saw we had this thing, but it was the connection with OpenStack that really accelerated it because it kind of became one of the de facto storage elements for block storage for OpenStack deployments. And we were very excited about these cloud kind of things when they came out, and we were
Yeah.
looking into our web panel software has always been external to the servers, so it uses SSH keys to get into servers, and so that actually is I think cPanel I think still doesn't work that way. But, so because of that, the servers can be in any location. So I actually
Hmm.
built an early prototype of our web panel controlling AWS instances, things like that. Like it works. So when OpenStack came around, we started participating, and I went to all the early conferences for that. We actually ended up there was another spin-off company where we did a networking layer as well because the virtual networking component was difficult. That one ended up failing. Did not have the success that Inktank and Ceph had. But so through that, Ceph ended up being a success for us by selling that to Red Hat.
Yeah.
And that team still works at Red Hat now. A lot of those people are still
No.
there actually. So that was an interesting experience for sure. The cloud part of it, the OpenStack part of it, was less of a success for DreamHost business wise. We still run OpenStack mostly for internal use. We do have a public cloud, but it's not one of our major products, I would say.
Yeah, actually, I remember. I don't know exactly how it works now. I think OpenStack needs a bit like things on top to be like really a product to be used, right? And I remember the early days because we were integrating with OpenStack back in the days at Modules Garden, and it was
Mm.
such a raw product. Like we saw so many companies trying to implement OpenStack, like it's a great idea. It's an open cloud solution that you can implement. But when it came to actual execution to a real product to be fully automated and all of that, it really took every single company that we were working with. It took ages and required a team to really set all the blocks together. So you're saying that it's not being used by DreamHost except the internal use, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do our product that we built on, which is called Dream Compute, does still exist. It's just I think because of some of those complexities. So we had all the other layers. So you still needed a billing system. You needed a way to pull the usage out of it. You know, it
Yeah.
tracked usage, but it didn't have any connectors. I think it's had the most success as kind of private clouds or like small dev clouds, and it's a very robust tool. I think they probably early on. I think it was probably a mistake to expand it to so many projects so early on because
Yeah, yeah,
basically everything that anyone wanted to do was they call it like the big tent concept. And then there's tools like Apache Cloud Stack that I know I've never personally used,
yeah,
but I think it's significantly simpler in some ways. But now that we have 15 plus years of OpenStack experience, it's not as big of a deal. But there's still things like we have some very old clusters that are still working, but it's not trivial to upgrade them. Things like
yeah,
that. There's probably people out there that would argue with me on this. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It has complexities,
yeah,
but we are
yeah.
still using it. And actually, at this point, we're designing a new cluster. So we will be deploying a brand new OpenStack cluster in the next few months. I think actually soon,
Okay.
but I'm not certain that we're going to add. Right now, you can have direct API access to OpenStack as a customer, and I'm not sure if we'll keep that or not, because not that many people need it, among our
Yeah.
users.
Limited use case and too much hassle.
Yeah, it's kind of like focus on what the solution is and build the products. What's the actual user and use case and all that.
Yeah. So you're involved in all these projects. You've been involved as a company with many, many different things, connecting all the dots. I guess the question is, how were you able to build your company to not be distracted too much, right? So you have projects here and there. It means that, obviously you cannot focus on one thing only. Was it really like the nature of you that you've implemented into the company, or how is this organized that it works?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the real answer is we just get distracted. I mean, which is, well, there's two sort of factors. First is trying to like be aware of it and limit the potential impact, keep
Yeah,
it to certain teams or whatever. Google talks about their 20% time thing. I don't know if I don't think that's a real thing anymore, um,
yeah,
but the reality is that engineer types and a lot of our team in particular are very creatively minded people, and creative people need a lot of variety in their lives.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's just the nature of it. It's why people make new things is because they need new things. So
yeah,
you have to allow a certain amount of that flexibility. You can't just
yeah,
be only doing what's right in front of you. So early days, our growth allowed us to just do more things. We, in retrospect, could have done less and probably been more successful again, also. But we had an early internet streaming radio station that ran for a while. It
Oh,
wasn't
really?
that many total people doing it. Yeah, just because we knew DJs. I'm still a DJ today. But so that was through our where we were in Los Angeles, there were DJs there and everything. So there wasn't a big audience for it. And that one we never really tried to turn into a product. I kind of thought about, like there was a market for early, audio streaming and things. We had a service called Files Forever at one point. Like we did kind of cloud storage, and some of our longtime users might know that. So some things are they're maybe experimental. Like we had a site builder tool that we built in house called Remixer that is still around actually, but it's not. It's in the process of being reborn, I would maybe say. But that you have to take these steps and try these things if you want to make a long-term company. I guess that's like a hint at that, but it's hard to know which ones are going to succeed and not, and timing
Yeah,
is a big
yeah,
part of
exactly.
it. And if you put not much into it, if you control the investment and keep it small, then you're not going to it's not going to be very painful, but also your chance of success is lower. So you have to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes you have to take some big steps and big tries, big swings, I guess, in the baseball world.
No, it's also about if you would focus only on one thing, it it could fail at the same time, right? And also there are so many possibilities. You need to allow yourself or your team to try new things and also allow to fail, right? It's just part of the process of being creative, is just to fail and not be punished for that, because eventually you may succeed with some things, right? I guess it's to some extent in your DNA. I can relate to that.
Mhm.
But at the same time, what about now? What is DreamHost up to now? Are you still experimenting, or are you more focused now, or maybe you split new things in like separate companies, or how do you deal with that now?
Yeah, I think DreamHost is more focused now. The thing is, like, the industry is more commoditized now. Like, you can get the more or less the exact product in certain ways. There's probably there's less total competitors, but everyone more or less has the same thing. And then so we do compete on price, obviously, but you're not going to win only competing on price. There has to
Yeah.
be a reason someone chooses you. So I spend a lot of time thinking about, like, what's unique about us, what's can we be best in the world at, and then try to do that. So there's a lot of, like, kind of positioning and moving in that direction, but at the same time you have to be competitive still. The Obviously AI is the big thing, but a lot of that for us is thinking about how that can be actually useful, to our type of user. In living in the tech world, you would think that every single person is using it now, today, all the time, and that's not obviously true. So being thoughtful about how these different tools, what they're actually good at and what they're not good at,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
how those can be applied to businesses. What I'd say we're more focused at than ever now is, so we're very data heavy. We collect a lot of data. We do a lot of data analysis. Most of our meetings are looking at charts, and we're trying to understand user behavior, what people want, what they're trying to do.
Hmm.
So focused on those needs, and then being user driven that way is where I'd say we used to be much more technology driven, but now we're more on the
Hmm.
user driven side. So there's new products coming all the time.
Okay. All right. So you touched the AI topic. We have to talk about AI then.
Right. Yeah.
I saw your recent post about the what's it called, AI gold rush,
Right.
and in to some extent, I would say that I also have a degree. I studied computer science, and I kind of understand what AI is and how it really works. And it's more about probability and guessing rather than thinking deeply about what you put into it. It's not what corporations or many decision guys in many corporations are about. So that's why people expect that AI is going to solve their problems magically, when it often isn't. So what's your point of view
Mhm.
about AI, like in general, but also maybe in terms of the industry? What impact is going to have in web hosting, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, to start, I use some sort of tools daily, but I
Yeah,
definitely think it's you
you
and
cannot deny that. Yeah, the
yeah,
impact.
and well, and it's when it saves a lot of time. It's sometimes there's things that are possible now that weren't before, that is does feel kind of magical. Like, even one simple example, like, I had a chart of some, like, shipping info. This is for the wine business, which we can talk about later. But like a chart of shipping info kind of thing, like with zip codes and whatever. Like, anyway, but it was on a PDF. And it's like, this is sort of annoying to have to type all this in. So I could drag that into ChatGPT and then immediately just start asking it questions like, how much does it cost to send this thing to New York? And it could look
Yeah.
that up. And I was like, that was actually fairly magic. I was curious to how well it would work. And so that one was a bit shocking that it worked so well. But then just last night, I was trying to update a 1998 era website that's still running to modern code. And eventually I gave up, but it kept saying, like, it looks perfect now. It got pretty close, but it wasn't quite exactly right, so I
Yeah.
kept pushing it, but it just made it worse. So the whole vibe coding thing, what I will say is, it's made that more fun again. It's sort of like I have this but very enthusiastic coding team with me, and you have to learn how to use the tools. It will get better, because what'll happen is, like, someone will build in the coding processes into the tool itself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's already starting to happen, the multi-step
Yeah.
thing. Because if you ask it to say build a big feature, it will try to do it, and possibly get it right, but sometimes fail. I added a database. This is this personal project, so I've been using it like for these kind of like personal projects to learn. But I was saying, my the database connection keeps failing, so it's like, okay, I'll add connection pooling and auto reconnect and all these things, and I was like, okay, let's try it. And as far as I know, it worked, like first try. But for the industry, like most of our type of user are not necessarily coding every day.
Hmm.
We have users that might be, that are, agency types, and that might use it for their own actual productivity. But a lot of the problems that people are facing are more, how do I get more customers for my business? Or,
Yeah, yeah,
how do I do the same amount of work with less people? Maybe if, they may want to pay their best people more, as, costs go up, but they may not be able to afford their whole team. So yeah, I can help with that, is a little less clear. And then, the number of times that you hear that hallucinations were introduced into, say, things presented to courts in front of judges, I'm just shocked. That, I mean, I understand lawyers are very busy and dealing with a lot of
yeah,
information, but I'm just like, that seems crazy how quickly they're adopting. Just the other day, this week, there was a headline: one of the big consulting firms introduced hallucinations into some work that they had done for a big tech company, Microsoft or something, and
yeah.
had to refund the whole thing. It was just, the work was bad. It's just like, so clearly those are big problems, and I'm still a bit surprised they're using them. So we're being more cautious about that.
Yeah.
I think it's important to know what the potential downsides are. Like if it's wrong with that, with that information, what is the ramifications there?
But you're also suggesting that people are lazy, right? Even big companies.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to look at it. I mean, it's just like, if you can get more done more quickly. So because it is like, you
Yeah,
see that magic, and it's tedious to go back and edit it. It's probably better to write it yourself.
yeah,
But in terms of how it impacts the industry, like, my general feeling is that the vast majority of people with websites do not want to make websites. And so the solutions that have made websites easier, like site builders,
hmm,
they are easier than learning code by hand,
yeah,
but it's still, to do exactly what you want, they get pretty sophisticated pretty fast. They're effectively a layout engine, right? But
yeah,
people still ultimately don't want to do that stuff. So if the AI can effectively act like that, if you can just talk to it and it can understand what you want and give you what you expect back, that does start to become fairly magical.
yeah,
We think there's got to be human involvement still, right now. So we're thinking about, how do you make it to where you can seamlessly kind of go between the two
yeah,
worlds. Like imagine, so we're very much promoting the fact that humans are always there with you. You're never alone
yeah,
when you're, like on the DreamHost platforms. Human support is a big part of the product, but obviously productivity is important. So how do you allow a human to potentially attach to your current session and help you with it, or things like that? Like, where does the human layer get embedded? So that's how we're seeing it. But in terms of what it means for the industry, I think tools like site builders are effectively at their end now. Like,
yeah,
there's always a long tail. Like, they're not going away tomorrow. Many of them, Squarespace is a good example, they are more well positioned than most companies to bring AI into their own tools. So that, it doesn't, yeah, I definitely approach the products thinking that most users, almost nobody, wants to make a website. They want to have a website, but not make one. That's how I think
yeah.
about it.
Yeah, okay. So, but let's talk about those users. So, what do you think will be the trends in the industry in the next couple of years? Given that AI is one thing, as we've spoke about, but what else? It's not only about AI, right?
No, not only. I mean, the continuing trend, like when we started, personal websites, family websites, things like this is all before social media. Like those were actually a sort of a popular category. Getting a domain just for personal email was more of a thing than now. Like, it was pre Gmail. Things like Yahoo Mail existed way early, but people then knew it looked more professional to have email at your own domain. And I think there's always going to be a need to put web content, or online content online. Like, apps have obviously, on mobile dominated, and taken over from the web. And that's something I speak out about somewhat. It's like apps can be taken down by app stores, websites can't. But apps typically I've been digging in more deeply the last, say, 6 months into the self-hosted open source web app world, which is actually much more dynamic and lively than I expected. I started looking into it. So when you think about privacy, which I know is a topic of importance, like controlling where your data, how it flows, where it goes to, how that often self-hosting is the best way to get there.
Hmm.
So I guess what I'm getting at here is that there's the use cases change. It might not be you're making a website for your business, and there might be some back-end tools that you're using. Like all of the big sort of cloud tools have uh, analogs that you could host in a more cost-effective, but also a more privacy-centric way. So how do you incorporate all of that? Like right now, you can spin up a VPS server on many different places, and you can set it up
Yeah.
if you have some sophistication. But the online ongoing maintenance is actually the work. Setting it up
Yeah.
is typically not that hard. Some tools like WordPress does a great job of minimizing the ongoing maintenance if you keep your plugin list small. But some of them, you need Docker knowledge, things like that. But
Yeah.
how do they talk to each other? Could you build those into a suite of tools that mimics what you get with Google Workspace, or whatever, things like that? So that's one angle. Like there's always needs for effectively what we do. It just might look a little different. It's like a different
Okay.
packaging of the tools.
Right. So is this the direction that you're going with DreamHost now, or what are the plans, if you can share, of course?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what you're hearing is what I personally think about. We have a variety of product teams. I mean, you've heard hints at other things. So there's different. It's sort of like there's different directions. So our core business is more about continuing to offer more value. We're building free websites for everyone. So down the angle of people don't want to make their
Yeah.
website, we're saying we'll make it for you.
I saw it. I
And
saw it. I'm really curious about the business model back there, but
honestly, we're just trying to remove that one point of friction and just see what happens next.
okay.
We have enough scale of people that I mean, we're not spending a lot of time on these sites, so a lot of it's about how do we through AI, through automation, through
Yeah.
just like general efficiency and increasing the tools. The reality is you can offer free websites to everyone, and they don't all take it. In fact, most of them don't take it. That's a hint for our competitors, maybe, but that's one angle on it. So basically, we're very much focused on getting people past the hump. They pick a host, and that's complicated. But now we're trying to get them all the way to they have a website, but that's still not success. So it's all about customer success. But so trying to identify different layers of success, and different kinds of tools for different types of use cases. I think we're not competitive enough in the sort of more open infrastructure side. We do have our public cloud system, on top of OpenStack, but I think that's too hard to use. Tools like Hetzner and OVH and DigitalOcean and things like that are quite popular for certain use
Yeah.
cases. But a problem problems we've had in the past is going a little too literally after certain types of product markets. When we came out with our cloud quite a lot of years ago now, we targeted the AWS crowd a little too directly, and that didn't make sense for business reasons or for technology reasons. And so that was a big learning. But so now it's very much about like, who are our current users? Like, who likes us over
Yeah.
these other ones? What are they trying to get from us? But we've largely built our products around simplifying managing servers. So our whole, web interface is really about being able to manage a server without knowing how to. But now you can just ask ChatGPT and it'll tell you how, or it'll build you a little script to do it for you or whatever. So that's another way AI's changed it. So the what's easy now is changed. Basically, what is considered easy or hard has shifted, and so
Yeah.
you have to take
Yeah.
that into account in product design. So there's that.
Yeah.
But so anyway, we're thinking about a lot of different things. I am personally very much interested in the self-hosting world at the moment. Like I've switched I still use RSS because that's of my era, but my RSS feed, I use fresh RSS underneath that's hosted on a server that's on DreamHost. So I like that no one else in the world knows what RSS feeds that I'm reading. I don't.
Yeah.
Feedly doesn't have that information anymore. Google doesn't have that. You trust these companies, but it's better to not have to trust.
Right. Okay. So that transitions very smoothly into data privacy thing. You had a very very loud dispute with U.S. Department of Justice about it
Mhm,
back in 2017, right? It ended up that you were able to protect the data of your users, at least the majority, as far as I understood.
mhm,
But it was 2017. It was 8 years ago. I remember things like ACTA. People were protesting and very mad about, data privacy in the internet is very important now. Our data is important, and if you think about it, in 2025, 90% of all the things in the ACTA is already being implemented that just people didn't notice because it was like
mhm,
in the meantime sneaked out and through different legislation. What yeah, maybe first of all, we can talk about what happened back then, but also has
mhm.
the thinking about user data protection changed? Do you think it's still a thing to protect it, to talk about it, or like people forgot and just like whatever?
I mean, it's a good question. I think I would like people to think about it more. Some people think more about it. I think Europe is more sensitive to it than we are. And yeah, we have customers, actually, like Canadian customers, for example, that are like, I like you guys, but I need to move my data to Canada. And I'm like, okay, can't argue with that, right? But
What can you
I
do?
mean, I think fundamentally, a person's data is them now. Increasingly,
Hmm.
whatever data you create is your footprint, and that should not be just there to be exploited by anybody who wants to. So
Yeah,
it's a little too late for me, but I think more about my kids. I have teenagers now, like how much information is available about them, about their tracking. Like I make all of our family use DuckDuckGo as our main search engine. It's actually
yeah,
remarkable. That's, of course, a quick tangent, but it's remarkable how just switching the default in your browsers, you can still go to Google if you want to, or go to wherever else. The most of your searches not be tracked is a kind of a novel thing, and you might not even miss the data. But um, I mean, it's not just our government now too. It's actually a bit alarming what the UK is asking Apple for. It's like in the name of enforcing like noble causes, like trying to prevent sexual abuse of children and things like that, which is obviously terrible. But it's the slippery slope situation. Is it? If we had zero privacy, that's obviously a problem. But allowing someone else to pick and choose what's private is an issue. So the case from 2017, what they it was an overreach of what they were asking for. We were hosting a website that was helping people organize a protest against the inauguration of the president. Protests are free speech and highly
yeah,
supported and protected in the U.S. Even protests you disagree with, all of them. So they were asking for all information related to everyone who had visited, all information related to the website. They just did a very broad ask, and I can understand why they would ask for that. They're like, whatever, we'll see what we can get. But they were fairly forceful about it. A lot of times they do ask broadly, and then we push back and say we can't give all that to you, and they'll
yeah,
take what we can give them. In this case, they took it farther than most, and we had to go to court and defend it, actually. So we had to spend money to protect that. Everyone who just was curious about it, journalists, like anyone who just went to
yeah,
the website, would be caught up in that, and all information included potentially personally identifying information, IP addresses, and things like that we do log. So we still do log that information because it's useful for a lot of reasons for managing a
yeah,
website, right? There are services that don't log anything. The stats tools now a lot of times don't track things as closely. There's GDPR.
yeah,
Preserving. I mean, that's a European thing, but we pay attention to those. But in that time, I ended up being one of the ones that went on TV when it became a news thing, but I wasn't even aware of it happening. So that was more of a cultural thing that our team was like, no, we can't give you that information. That's like not
yeah,
yours. And that's fundamentally what it is we don't see it as our information to give. Like that
yeah,
information belongs to first the site owner. Um, it just isn't. You don't have the right to just get whatever you want. It's like coming
Yeah.
into a house, or I mean, do they have the right to go to a restaurant and ask for information about everyone who went to that restaurant? I mean, that's a little bit
Yeah.
of a silly contrived one, but it just doesn't make sense that they should know. People have a right to privacy and anonymity, and that in the real world makes a lot of sense to people, but on the online world, it does also. Using crime, and terrorism is now the new one. Like it's like the means, the ends justify the means. It's not how it works. You need to be better at your job, and then they ask for backdoors into encryption technology, and that's a fundamental misunderstanding of how encryption works. um, it's like that door will be opened by the wrong people. I've been posting articles that I find that I think are especially illuminating about this. Like traffic cameras are popping up all over the place, and some police organization, and they're police organizations that are experts in being police, not experts in being technologists or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, they had set up all these cameras that were just open, and someone was able to find all of the pictures of all the cars that had passed by over like
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
days. And I was like, I'm not faulting them for not knowing how to set up the cameras correctly. It's like if they didn't have the
Yeah.
cameras in the first place, it's like it's better to be private by default, which technologists understand fully. Yeah. So in terms of people, social media now, I think people give up even more than ever now.
Yeah. They want to give it. They want to give it, right, to others. They want to show
You
off. They want to see where I
share
was, see what I'm
everything.
doing, right?
Yeah, I'm still a bit confused about Foursquare, which is still apparently around, but like people just
Yeah.
broadcast their location all the time. And we've had some angry customers that were kind of stalking us a little bit in the past, like virtually. So I generally do not broadcast my location, very broadly. But yeah, I mean, I'd say overall, as an average, people think about privacy even less. I think if people make the decision and they say, like, I'm willing to give up my privacy in exchange for likes and hearts and whatever, okay, I'm not sure that's a fair trade, but it's like it's their trade to make, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it should actually be, I think these services can exist. It's just about people being able to make informed decisions. So anytime when your information is being taken and used without your knowledge, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And again, I think the EU has done some better job on that. The US has done basically no job at all on that. But I think that's fundamental part of the internet, continuing to be useful.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been trying to promote it more, talk about it more among like
Yeah.
people who might not think about it every day.
Yeah, it's about education because people just are not aware. They just like if you have kids, you give them the phone, they start using it. How are they aware that that may be a threat, right? It's just you were using it just like anyone.
Yeah. People are starting to notice like how ads are following them around and things like that. The
Yeah, it's crazy.
advertising
Yeah.
is the most obvious, and then of course the advertisers are like, "Isn't it better to have ads that are more applicable?" And you're like,
Yeah.
"Well, yes, but isn't it better to have no ads at all?" I'm like, I understand advertising's not going away, but
Yeah.
I mean, and I've purchased things on Instagram. Like I can see something in my room. There's this little LCD screen that shows like the album cover of whatever music I'm listening to, and it's just a fun little thing. And I found that on Instagram, and it's cool. It's called Tune Shine. I actually encourage people to get one, but so I would not have learned about that, and it probably showed me that ad because I follow some musicians and DJs or whatever. I don't know. I have shown some interest in music, so um, I use
Yeah.
these services as well, but I try to do it with an open eyes.
Yeah. Right. So let's talk about the music then, or maybe anything about outside the technology, because you were a DJ. You have your winery. Tell me about it.
Well, I've always been a very creative person, and that's sort of the creativity merged with the engineering or whatever, and that kind of has ultimately led to a lot of the things we've created. And it's actually fun to if you talk to any, this is another tangent here, but if you talk to any coder, they probably want to make their own text editor, right? It's like you want to make tools to
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
coding editor, right? You want to make the tool that you use to make, other stuff. But yeah, I was in, I started being in bands and starting in high school, and I didn't play any instruments. I was a terrible singer. And I found electronic music and started making synthesizers and drum machines and all that, the technology itself was relatively easy for me to grasp. It's not complicated stuff
Yeah.
compared to what we work with. But so I've actually been making music and DJing for since college days, like 30 years or whatever at this point, more than 30 years. And that's just been something that's always kind of, I've always needed to have side areas to kind of, it helps me refocus and not
Yeah.
get too distracted, and try to keep an eye on kind of the why are we doing all of this. Technology itself is not actually doesn't actually drive me. I think there are people that actually just enjoy technology. I see them as tools.
Yeah.
They're also fun toys. I like to play with it. There's nothing nothing wrong with that. Yeah, so musically though, as yeah, you can see behind me, there's a drum kit over there. There's some like DJ turntables there, and there's a camera sitting up there too because I do some live streams sometimes. I haven't actually done one in a while. There's some synthesizers sitting actually right behind this computer here. So that's just something that I just kind of I feel like I have to do, so I make time for it.
Okay.
At times in my life, what'll start happening to me, I start feeling like I'm not getting anything done, and I'm not being productive, and that's a big problem for me. Is like, is my impact not there? I'm not satisfied just sitting around watching things. I need to be doing things. Um, so I realized at some point it's because if I haven't done anything creative in a while, then I start feeling like I'm not getting anything done. Like I
Yeah.
don't get enough personal value out of sort of managing other people and that part of it. That is rewarding. That's a rewarding activity. But it's not quite the same. It's like I need to
Yeah.
be hands on. So that's why I'm still working on personal projects. In the middle of my week, most weeks, just to keep myself interested, keep learning new things. The wine business actually was a little more of an accident. The We kind of have our like summer house, and like so I live in San Francisco, so near here is of course wine country. That's very very well known in the world. So Napa Valley of course is known, but my I have the county just to the west is Sonoma, which is another major wine region in California, and so we have a property there, which we spend time in the summer. The weather is much nicer there. It's nice and warm and sunny and things like that. San Francisco can be quite gloomy sometimes. So that was what it came for, and so it has a wine. But my family has been interested in wine. My father-in-law since like for decades, since the 1970s, something like that. So there's a
Yeah.
long history of wine in the family that I actually probably drink beer more than I drink wine, but so that came out as a business. So we're doing that. We do not make money on that. We hope to lose less money over
Okay.
time. But what is interesting about it is it does put me in the mindset of like, what are the needs, what are the problems of a small business owner? It's
Okay.
like we have a website, we sell it online. It is a WordPress based website, but the commerce part of it is actually like a separate system. Effectively, the WordPress is a wrapper around it. It's just the needs of selling alcohol, because it's a controlled thing. Like you have to use specialized services and things, so
Hmm.
it's a little complicated. When I was told I had to make a new website because services were changing, like I didn't want to do that. It's like an example. Like, of course, I know how, but it's not the number one thing that I want to do each day. On top of the fact that I have a day job through DreamHost, I also have teenage children who have their own sports and their own activities,
Yeah.
and now we have
Mm.
a puppy at home also. Like, there's all these other things going on, and then this business is just one part of it. But it is a fun one. It's named after our family name, so the larger family gets a big kick out of it. Harvest is coming up pretty soon, and so a lot of them will come out to help pick the grapes and all that. So it's
Nice.
a nice family thing. But again, it's like sort of reminding you why you do why you're doing what you do every day. Like, we're not ultimately doing this just to it's not just for a paycheck or whatever, or even just it's like you got to keep the fun, and they're ultimately like kind of back to the beginning. We were talking about distractions. They are ultimately distractions in my life,
Oh
but
yeah, but
life really is about finding the distractions that are the most interesting, right?
yeah, and I guess also putting yourself in the perspective also gives you much more understanding the essence of your business, right? But do you think is the distraction like the source of your success, or like what do you think was the leading force that got you to where you are right now?
Yeah, I don't know if the distraction is the source or not. I've met a lot of different people. Although if you meet entrepreneurs, if you meet founders, they do tend to be like a lot of times they sell a business and start a new one. Like they tend to actually have this
Yeah,
factor about them. But the most successful in our industry are probably not run by founders anymore. We're one of the very few still run
yeah,
by founders. So I think if you want to be the biggest you can be, it's probably not founder led most of the time. Like
that's right.
there's some counter examples. Mark Zuckerberg is still a founder, but he's a bit of a unique one, right? But I think timing. I mean, timing was ultimately really helpful. Like we were very early. Um, Being too early is definitely a thing, but I think because of the fact that we didn't need to rely on the existence of a ecosystem of software or tools or whatever. We could build everything ourselves. That early factor helped. And then something I forgot to mention earlier. So GoDaddy actually, when they started doing advertising, they basically raised the whole ocean. So it actually was beneficial to us early on because they were actually teaching the world what
Mm-hmm.
domains and hosting, like you could get your own website. Like they were teaching everyone that. And of course they kept a lot of the customers from that, but a lot of our flow of customers were people who wanted a better experience.
Yeah.
We were often the second host they had after somebody like GoDaddy when they realized it could be better, there could be better support, all that kind of thing. But there was a whole time when basically we were growing quite quickly because the whole market was, and we were there early enough, established enough. So that was a timing element. But we also somehow were able to not get keep up with the growth. We certainly had some growing pains along the way, but that's probably attributable to the team. We hire people who care about what they're doing. They care about technology and they like to solve problems. And so every new thing is just a new problem to solve. And, how quickly can we solve it? We weren't focused necessarily on monetizing everything the most we could. It wasn't that. It was about just sort of building things and keeping it going and all that. And then success is relative. These companies, a lot of our competitors are quite a bit bigger than us now, but obviously we're big enough to survive. We
Yeah.
also we have no outside investors. That is another one of them. So we've never had outside investment. We were bootstrapped from the beginning. So that meant we were free to go at our own pace. We were free to do these things that were ultimately distractions and that,
Yeah.
most people would say like, why are you doing that? And we're like, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you just want to have some fun, right? It's also part of the job to enjoy it.
Yeah, and we had like, having fun in our sort of mission statement. It's like we do all this while having fun, like because I
Yeah.
think because we're trying to build we've always thought long term about it, and it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Like, in the near term you can go faster, but you're going to tire out. So we've really tried to not tire our team out. We don't overwork them. A lot of even big tech companies, even ones that I might greatly respect, they probably push workers. A lot of times those workers get they know it again, they may know what's going on, they may get paid well and then have early retirement. But we have team members that have been with us for 25 years, at this point.
Yeah.
And it's just and there's pros and cons to that. Like they came in basically not knowing anything, so everything that they know is how we've done it. And so that's good in the sense that things will just keep kind of going, but it also means if you want to try to do something in a new way, it takes a lot of retraining and all that kind of thing. So but that team culture of like we're all in this together, and when things get tough we keep doing it. I think that having a strong team culture and people having opportunities to have fun and work on other things is what allows them to really buckle down and come together when necessary. So, because I think
Hmm.
teams that are driven through more top down, through more fear and force, they'll tend to collapse under pressure.
Hmm.
It's more of a house of cards. So, sort of long term sustainable growth and team building is helps as well. But there's different scales, and you have to kind of figure out what kind of business you actually want. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of room in this industry for niche businesses that may do hosting and also adjacent services, design or whatever, for verticals and things like that. Like it's very possible. The internet is very broad.
Yeah. So if you were, so I guess that would be the last question. If you were starting from scratch, or you were young again,
Mhm.
and you would decide, okay, let's make a business. What would you do? Or What would you advise to anyone who's starting now to build their own thing?
Just to build anything. Um, Yeah. So I part of the way I feed my like being able to have side projects for distractions is I do some amount of investing in other companies and also advising a little bit, things like that. Not a ton. It's actually fair bit of work, but I like to hear the enthusiasm and ideas that other founders have and all that. Some of the advice I give them, there's a couple ways you can kind of be successful. One of them is, people say follow your passion, whatever, like that's I've heard that debunked a little bit. It's like, yes, you should be excited about what you're doing, but there's a lot of people with passion for music or passion for food or whatever that
Yeah, yeah,
they're not
yeah.
all going to survive. Like typically things that you're passionate about other people are also passionate about. The better way is identifying problems that not everyone is aware of. So sometimes that might be, maybe you have someone in your family or someone who does a business. There's a lot of these businesses that are solving a certain problem. Maybe it's like a trucking thing or whatever. I'm trying to think of some examples here. I know that I was
Yeah.
talking to one founder. They had sort of a new device that would help track where specific trucks, like cargo trucks, where they were at different times. And I guess the tools to do, there were of course solutions to that problem, but there's like, they could do it better, and that's something had not occurred to me. I wouldn't know how to solve that problem. I'm not exactly sure why that was exciting to them, but a lot of people are just excited about solving problems. But anyway, identifying problems that you personally can solve maybe better than anyone else because of knowledge or skills. It's a good starting point. It's like having unique product in the market is one way to get an audience. You don't have to, that'll market itself better. You don't have to worry about going fast as much. So you don't necessarily have to take investment. There's nothing wrong with venture capital. It's just, I think there's something wrong with the mentality of like Silicon Valley, that every idea should be $1 billion idea. That's just not the case. So in Silicon Valley, you hear about the unicorns, the $1 billion valuations, and the big exits, and people get wealthy and all that. You don't tend to hear about the other 10,000 for every one of those, or however many it is, that
Yeah.
completely fail. So it's the kind of, if you're only ever going for like hitting a rocket to space, then most of those rockets are going to blow up. But basically, I don't know what people should do. I just have some pontification on it. But if you've identified a problem, you can create a solution. However, you also need people to pay for that solution.
Yeah.
That's the market part of it.
Or maybe you can just vibe code it, right? And why would you need people to do it?
Yeah, I think about that too. I was like, I worry in the future, it's like where things are going. Like 5 years from now, there's going to be so much mediocre code on GitHub. Like it's going to be a complete mess of like projects that half work and do something. I'm just like, it's just going to be ridiculously hard to find anything worthwhile.
It's already happening, right? I had a discussion recently with Oliver from PatchStack. He was saying that there are so many vibe coded plugins that people are installing on the live website that they don't even know what security is, and
Right.
it's already a problem, right? So
Yeah.
we are living in a very interesting time.
Yeah, and there's gonna need to be like, basically email got ruined effectively by spam, right? And like this
Yeah.
this like, I mean, they call it slop, AI slop, but it is basically spam in the same way. Like, so social media is like more and more not real content, not real
Yes.
people, bot stuff. And so how do you refine your experience? Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, in terms of people, if they want to start something in technology, I think actually obviously helps to be interested in technology. So I think just continuing to play with it. Yeah, like think of it as like fun,
Experiment,
like
yeah.
experiment, follow the fun, and you may stumble upon something. I think
Yeah.
if young people want to get into it, like helping with open source projects is a good way to raise your profile, to raise your experience. I'm definitely a proponent in that world, and it's kind of amazing. I mentioned it earlier, just like it's amazing how many people just put out code for no other, just for other people to use, and it's kind of like making music in a sense. Like I don't expect to ever sell any music. It's not why I do it. And so it's that applies to coding. Like coding is a creative thing. So I see
Yeah.
that they want people to use it, but if you use it, you can contribute things back or whatever. But that's not about how to make money from it though. It's a little trickier.
All right,
But
let's end with that. So thank you, Dallas, for the interview, and congratulations on building your business on your own. I mean, with your partners, but being bootstrapped and sticking with your follow the fun principle, right? And keep playing, keep being distracted. I think it's very important to just enjoy what you're doing and have a little way to find new things and opportunities that are not on the plain sight. That's about it, I guess.
I mean, I think people need to just think about what's best for themselves. Yeah, stay independent. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
that. Follow the fun.
Follow the fun, exactly.